There's no competition at the moment, but you know, I'm happy to take the job if that's what comes along. No, Tim did a very good job, you know, built up our membership, created lots of enthusiasm, but the situation's moved on, and I think in two fundamentally different ways from where we were 2 years ago. The first is that, of course, the whole Brexit debate now dominates the national agenda, and I will have to approach that consistently with where we were before, but in a different parliament. And I think the other thing which is different from a couple of years ago is that the two major parties we're competing with are in a very, very fragile state. No, I didn't at all. Actually, I got my literary reference wrong. I think it was Stalin who talked about rulers cosmopolitans. No, I thought
that particular phrase, citizens of nowhere, was quite evil. It could have been taken out of Mein Kampf. That was a silly thing to say, wasn't it?
Well, if you read the next sentence, what I said, it was totally out of character, and that provided the balance in the quote. Well, it's certainly not to abolish it, because the system has actually worked well in many respects. It's kept universities properly funded, it's opened the way to a large number of low-income students, but there are clearly problems with the system. You know, the universities do operate as a form of cartel, there are issues around interest. So I'm certainly up for having a fresh look at it, but I think the point
Are you happy with a situation where people from quite humble backgrounds can leave university with a debt of £57,000 and high interest rates? Is that really fair?
What is fair, and let's remember, this is not a system I and my party created. It was created.
You jacked it up.
It was created by a Labour government, who promised not to introduce it and did, and promised not to increase it and did, and supported by the Conservatives. What I did was substantially to raise the threshold.
You tripled to £9,000.
Yes, I raised the threshold of repayment, so it effectively operates as a form of graduate tax, and increased the generosity of grants for maintenance, because half of this debt is because of maintenance, it's not because of tuition, and the Conservative government then abolished that. So there are certainly things that need looking at. The one thing I would stress is that there are 60% of young people who don't go to university. They don't get access to the student loan scheme. I've been working with the National Union of Students over the last year, looking specifically at further education, and that's 60%. So if we review this system, and I'm certainly up for being open-minded and pragmatic about it, we've got to look at young people as a whole and not just the 40% who go to university. You know, Jeremy Corbyn had a good election, for sure. But there is an element of a bubble about it. I mean, he managed to attract large numbers of people on the basis that he was leading opposition to Brexit. Actually, he was very pro-Brexit and hard Brexit. And I think when that becomes apparent, the divisions in the Labour Party will become more real, and the opportunity for us to move into that space will be substantial. I do not want it to fail economically. I don't think the public voted to have cuts in their standard of living. And I think that's why there are two objectives, I think, in the Brexit.
I mean, the reason I ask that, if I may interject, is that you have said you have to hang on while the economy deteriorates before the public mood changes, and that's your moment, which makes it sound as if you're going to be kind of an economic Eeyore, as it were, observing disaster happening and just waiting for your moment.
No, I think it's not waiting for the moment. There is an imminent issue, which is whether the government continues to pursue the so-called hard Brexit, leaving the customs union and the single market. And we've got to work with other people. We did last week. There was a motion in Parliament led by some Labour MPs we supported to try and head off that disastrous outcome. But it may well be that with the situation deteriorating in the economies, I think it will, I mean, none of us are certain, but I think it will, people will realise, well, we didn't vote to be poorer, and I think the whole question of continued membership will once again arise. I'm beginning to think that, you know, Brexit may never happen. I think the problems are so enormous. The problems are so enormous. The divisions within the two major parties are so enormous. I can see a scenario in which this doesn't happen. And certainly, you know, our policy of having a second referendum, which didn't really cut through in the general election, is designed to give a way out when it becomes clear that the Brexit is potentially disastrous.